that's why if LNG should compete with the pipeline gas or with the subsidized oil, it's very difficult for LNG to utilize in Java Island. I think that's one
Thank you,
thing.
Pa. Thank you, Pa Bara. Vishal, what I'd like you to comment on is, because I think, you know, being in McKinsey, you have not only understood Indonesia, but you also seen how this maps out in some of the other countries. So could you give a little bit of a comment about how do you see this Indonesia-specific issue, and do you have any parallels that you've seen around?
Sure. Let me start by saying that Indonesia is really at an inflection point as far as gas is concerned in today's market, right? Now, there are a lot of opportunities, and if Indonesia plays well, there's a lot of upside. If we do not capture the opportunities, there's a very high risk that we go down the same path as this country has gone down in the case of liquids, where we become a net importer. There's a very significant downside risk here. Yeah. But as I said, there are a lot of opportunities where we can learn from some of the other parallels to capture the upside here.
Yeah. What would be the parallels?
Yeah, so let me comment on some of these where I see is important from an industry perspective, and I would span across the value chain, right? Yeah. So if I start from the upstream, I do hear and echo some of the points that my fellow panelists have made. The upstream needs to keep up with the production here, right? The demand is increasing, will increase. In fact, there's a lot of latent demand, and as Bara said, I mean, it's a supply-driven market. So even though you don't see a lot of demand yet, as soon as you make the gas available at a competitive price, you could easily see demand go up by 20-30%, which is not even captured in today's forecast or in today's market. There is easily 800 million SCF to a BCFD of latent demand that is not getting served. Now, if you compare that with the production here in Indonesia, the gas production has remained flat to going down. I mean, Mahakam, which was producing about 2.3 billion SCF at its peak, is now producing 1.6. We'll have to see what it produces next year. Yeah. And some of the major fields that were supposed to have come online, Natuna, you talked about the IDD and some of the other stranded gas, the big fields are nowhere close to FID. So they are at least 10 to 15 years out from contributing significantly. So it's important that in Indonesia makes sure that it's incentivizing the upstream production. Otherwise, it is going to be quite imbalanced, and it might go down the liquids way. So that's on the upstream side, right? Now on the midstream, I think it's very important to recognize that irrespective of where we land up on net balance, on gross, we do recognize that there will be a lot of import that is coming in. Now, whether the gas comes in from Papua and Kalimantan or it comes from import sources doesn't matter. But as you said, Hangab, the demand sources are in South Sumatra and West Java. And it is important that there is some kind of a national grid for gas, which currently is at best only partially exists, right? I mean, there's a grid which connects South Sumatra to West Java, and there are pockets of FSRU coming in, which is starting to connect, but I think there's a long way to go before you can actually call, a national grid for gas that will take care of the volatility that some of you mentioned, and that will take care of the latent demand that exists in Indonesia. So I think it's important that as a country, someone is looking at an end-to-end national grid for gas to take care of these uncertainties. I think the third thing that Indonesia, there's an opportunity is to figure out, what kind of technology one needs to bring in. And this is again across the sector, right? On upstream, most of the gas that is coming is going to be sour, it's stranded, it's going to be very high CO2. So what kind of technologies can Indonesia deploy to bring the costs down? Otherwise, under current technology regimes, they would be at the very high end of the cost curve, which is not going to be economical or will comply with the ministerial decree that has come out, right? On the midstream side, I mean, I think Indonesia has done very well in pioneering the whole FSRU. I mean, one of the first ones to really go big on FSRU. When Indonesia started, the cost were around $2 to $3. It has come down by at least 50%, if not more, over the last few years. So I think it's important that we continue on this technology curve to ensure that the gas remains a bit viable, right? I think the last thing that I would to say, the fourth thing is we need to recognize that not just Indonesia, globally, gas is going through a kind of an inflection age. I mean, at least for some countries, depending on which side of the table you are on, gas is going through a golden age, right? I mean, the whole balance has changed. I mean, US is now exporting gas, which was completely unexpected. Gas used to be one of the most illiquid commodity, but now ICE in London is coming up with a futures contract. I mean, Mark II Henry Hub exported LNG. So there's a lot of changes. There's a lot of liquidity that could come in the market, and I think Indonesia is very well placed, given it's just not just the historical production weight, but also the whole demand weight that it brings onto the table. And if it plays nicely, I think there's a lot of upside opportunities here for Indonesia.
Okay. Thank you. Actually, a couple of things come out from this discussion. The first thing is that we see that there is a kind of a lost opportunity coming up. I would say if gas production has decreased without a clear explanation, and you're also seeing there's a chicken and egg in terms of infrastructure versus demand, and you see that there is a latent demand, however, is not getting ready. And the third point being, it does take a long time. I think it takes about 15 years for you to actually develop the production capacity by the time you're able to get the product out, right? So keeping these points in mind, would you like to actually comment on what's the core issue? I mean, so where are we stuck? Why is this happening? I mean, say, is gas not being seen as a viable part of the mix? Where do you see, would you like to take that on, Pak Danny?
Thank you, Pak. So, based on our assessment, the three major issues why the use of gas is not as widely spread as we want to is, one is about infrastructure. Okay, infrastructure now only covers about 30% of the required infrastructures nationwide. I agree with you, Pak, that our ultimate goal is to have a nation grid. Just like PLN, we have national electricity grid, we have the RUPTL. Actually, in the gas infrastructures, we have the rich Kebun. And if we can materialize that, then we solve one problem of infrastructures. Second, which is now is very critical, is how to create demand. Demand side can be latent, but we have to convert from the liquid fuel. And I give you one example. When we want to convert from, let's say, MFO or HSD to LNG, because this is substituting fuel, so those people who are selling HSD will not stay put, because it's a cannibalism, right? So everybody wants to maintain their sustainability of business. It's competing to each other. And when the price of oil goes down, the competitiveness of LNG is no longer there. And third, which is very substantial, is the how we manage, how you call it, tata kelola in Indonesia. Now the governance, I think the House of Representatives is about to revise the Migas Law number 22, and we would like to see how the government will put each of the institution, how to regulate. Because, yes, there is demand, but so far Indonesia has been growing not more than 2 to 3% per annum in terms of demand of gas. If we consider that the conventional way of distributing the natural gas and also the non-conventional by using LNG, then we might penetrate a greater area, and we want to maximize the use of gas. But again, if we don't give the concession, now Indonesia is in the middle of a developing stage on how to make the infrastructures mature. So without any guarantee, nobody will do that. And now governments wants natural gas to be affordable. First of all, it's available, affordable, accessible, and don't forget the sustainability of the sectors.
Thank you, Pak Danny. I'd like to actually ask Pak Sampai, how realistic do you think is the national grid plan? And when do you think it can, is it a reality firstly? And because it seems to be an important solution, right?
Thank you very much. In that sense, we have to see it by taking into account geographics. Of course, when you're talking about national grids, If it is with electricity, probably
Much
cheaper,
easier.
easier, because either they can go down, go up.
Go up, yeah.
But here, maybe some with virtual pipeline, maybe vessels and value chain, hub, small scale, and everything has to be there. That's the way I think if we need to talk. But secondly, actually I want to say as well, because talking about national grid, our length of the country is, I don't know, it's almost I don't know, the length of this country, it's almost from Spain to Norway.
No, yes.
So I think, in that sense, it cannot be done by only one institution. It has to be seen cleverly which one should go to the national corporate and how will they do it, whether using PPP, etc. So don't we think in the way where you see the fat market and then you put somebody else there without looking the poor market. That's not the way to do this one, and it cannot be done only by his own fund. Is it realistic? For me, it is something that can be achievable. That's my answer for that. Because you know, from the government side, has to be always optimistic.
Sure, sure. Pawara, would you like to add something there? Because I have a question to all of you after this. Yes.
Okay. I think we have another solution to convert the liquid fuel to become gas. Yeah, the solution is the government should handle the infrastructure. It's mean all of the infrastructure or most of the infrastructure should funding by the APBN.